Welcome to Vuforia Spatial Toolbox Spike Prime Advanced. Today we're going to go over the Advanced mode, which combines a lot of the nodes from all of the other modes. So if you haven't already seen our videos on that, you should go ahead and check them out for a more in-depth look at all of the nodes we're going to be using today. In order to switch into Advanced mode, we're going to have to be in the Vuforia Spatial Edge server, and we're going to type in node server. If you haven't already seen our video on beginner mode, it goes into this connection a lot more, so I'd recommend to check it out. While this is running, we're going to go over to localhost 8080 in our web browser. It's going to look pretty much like this. We're going to go to the Manage Hardware Interfaces tab. We're going to turn our Spike Prime on if it's not already, and then go into settings and change this complexity level from beginner to advanced. Then we're going to hit save. In order to execute this change, we're going to have to go back into our terminal and hit Control-C and run the server again. So here once again we have our image target and our Spike Prime. If we go into the programming tab, you can see we have way more nodes than we've ever had in any mode before. So we have the most control over our Spike Prime. To utilize some of this control, let's go into our pocket. We're going to grab the rightmost graph. So this is the 1000 graph. It has axes from 2500 to negative 2500. Then we're going to connect that up to our accelerometer Z node. We're also going to go back into the pocket, grab the same graph we just grabbed, and we're going to drag it into our space, and we're going to connect it up to the accelerometer X node. So now we have two different axes of acceleration that we can measure at the same time. We also now have motor control at the same time, so we're going to go in and find a switch. I'm going to drag this switch into our space, and we're going to connect this switch up to stop motors so that if our Spike Prime starts to run away, we can stop all of the motors at once. So we're going to make sure this is turned on so that it doesn't start running away while we're making connections. We're going to connect the distance node to both of the motors, so the motors will run at whatever the distance sensor outputs. We're going to go ahead and unfreeze the screen so that we can see what happens when we turn stop motors off. So as you can see, it starts spinning in a circle. This is because the motors are in opposite directions, so the Spike Prime is spinning around instead of driving straight forward, but you can see some fluctuations in our accelerometer graphs. In order to better see some of the acceleration in the Spike Prime, we're going to make a proportional controller. So we're going to cut the distance to motor 1 link. I'm going to drag in a logic block. If you haven't already seen our logic block video, you should go check it out to get a better understanding of the logic nodes. We're going to open up this logic node and then go into the pocket and grab the invert block. So the invert block multiplies any number by -1. So we're going to connect it to the blue input and the blue output. And then we're going to hit the back arrow to go back into the programming tab. We're then going to drag from the distance node into the blue input of the logic node, and then from the blue output of the logic node into the motor 1 node. I'm going to move this logic node over a little bit so you can see the connections a little bit better. This is our full circuit for a proportional controller, and we're measuring the acceleration in the X and Z directions. So let's go ahead and unfreeze this screen for a second. As you can see, I have the Spike Prime blocks a little bit off in the distance, so the spike will slow down when it gets there. We're going to go ahead and unstop our motors. As you can see, there's a big jump in the X acceleration, and then the Spike Prime goes to the box, slows down. We can stop the motors here. As you can see, the Z direction didn't change that much, but there was a big change in the X direction, which was caused by the Spike Prime motors starting to move. So now you can see that Advanced mode has a ton of nodes and a ton of control over the Spike Prime, which you can use to visualize a lot of data and make much more complex programs within the Spatial Toolbox.